So I had an interesting convo with my daughter a couple weeks ago about beach sand nonetheless, and it evolved into a conversation about supply chains, the economy, and just being prepared. You see, we were on the beach and she was playing with some sand, and she said, "Dad, where does all this sand come from?" I said, well, these are mostly the remains of sea creatures, of millions of years worth of sea creatures that were like out there in the Caribbean at the bottom of the sea. So for some context, we're right there at the border of Florida and Alabama at the coast. But then she says, how do they get there? So I explained that for the most part, when you try to look up where beach sand comes from, they usually discuss about how it happens based on erosion happening on the shore. But if you look up asteroid strikes in the ocean, you'll find that they measure the tsunamis based on the sand that the tsunami brings to the shore from the impact of the asteroid strike. So, as you can imagine, this led to many other ideas and questions to explore, like how often does it happen? Well, it's actually quite common on a geological scale, but there's really no record of it ever happening during the course of our own civilization. And then, what if it happens now? And what will happen to everybody else who's not at the coast? This has me thinking about why everybody should be just stocked up on a normal basis. Now, here we are again in mid-2023, and we're starting to go through a supply chain issue all over again. I just made a video about that, detailing all of that just a couple days ago, just maybe like 3 or 4 days ago. In general, we seem to tend to want to prepare when we hear news like exports are being halted from India. But realistically, we should always be prepared. We saw that tsunami in 2004 that was triggered from an earthquake in the Indian Ocean, and it had waves of up to 100 feet high. It killed over 200,000 people in 14 countries, and these types of events are actually quite common. Just think, if it had happened 500 years ago, there would be very little record of it. Much less population, of course. Some towns that exist today wouldn't have existed back then, and some of the smaller towns that did exist would have been completely wiped out, haven't been hit by the wave. Other people would just show up after that from time to time where they thought there was supposed to be a town and would say, hey, what happened? I thought there was a town here. Where's everybody? This goes back to where the word tsunami comes from in Japan, where supposed myths of a giant wave just swallowing up an entire town. These waves are generated by asteroid strikes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and even mudslides. Supposedly there was a mudslide in Norway about 5,000, 6,000 years ago that caused a tsunami and then actually separated Great Britain from the rest of Europe. But what if something like that would have happened today from an asteroid strike where the wave would be, let's say, 200 feet instead of 100, and it happened in the Atlantic Ocean or the Caribbean Sea? So my daughter was asking me about different sizes of asteroids and different types. I told her that sometimes there could be comets that are mostly made of ice. Sometimes there could be asteroids that are either mostly made of rock or sometimes mostly metallic. And then if that's the case, a smaller metallic asteroid could cause even more damage just because it's metallic because of its density. And going back to my scenario, depending on the size and type of asteroid, Florida would be completely gone. Entirely. Not even northern Florida would survive. Most of the Caribbean islands, gone. The eastern coast of all countries on the Americas, gone. And then that wave would also go out to Western Africa and Western Europe. We've actually seen asteroid strikes in recent times. In Russia, there was an asteroid strike that was actually caught on video in 2013, injured 1,000 people.
It came out of nowhere, a bright speck in the sky, soon streaking across the horizon, followed by an almost apocalyptic scene, a blinding flash of light, and then all hell broke loose. Dizzying explosions shattering windows, knocking these office workers to the ground. These students were lucky, protected by curtains from the flying glass, and these men barely escaped the blast.
There was even a larger impact in 1908, and it was actually dubbed the largest asteroid strike in recorded history. June 30th is actually called Asteroid Day. It actually flattened 80 million trees across 830 square miles. It broke windows as far as hundreds of miles away, and nobody actually knew what it was at the time for at least 2 decades because it happened in such a remote area of Siberia. But what if that hit had occurred somewhere in the ocean somewhere? Aside from the loss of life, it probably would have put us back about 100 years. I more than likely wouldn't be uploading this right now, and most people alive today would choose to live far from the coastal area. But in the end, it didn't happen, but that isn't to say that it never will. This is why we should all be prepared for any disaster that may occur, whether it be a natural disaster or a supply chain issue like we're starting to see right now again. You should always have up to at least, say, 3 months worth of supplies should the need arise. Some people might go a little bit more extreme than that, but they might be called preppers. I run with the idea that in order to be financially secure, you have to be secure enough to enjoy your finances. That is to say, you need to do what you can to live a long and healthy life, regardless of the circumstances. Jerome Powell may be a tough guy with those interest rates, but don't disregard Mother Nature. Hey, check my video where I broke down those supply chain issues in detail. So be safe, buy some prepper pills, link in the description below. Buy gallons of water, buy gold, and as usual, give that like button a pound for me. I'll catch you later.